And secondly, I'll be here throughout the session if you could to answer the questions you have. So if you could type the questions in the chat box, I'll answer by text in parallel to Andy's presentation. Okay, so I'll now hand you over to Andy.
You were in control of my mute button. I was having a slight panic attack there, Ben.
I was. I had muted all of you. But there you go.
I'm here now. Thank you very much. Well, welcome to this myBTEC Advanced User webinar. You should be able to see my screen, the first slide of a short presentation that we're going to go through. It's a bit of a shame to be stuck indoors doing this, but unlike you guys, I work in Scotland, so my last day of teaching was today. So instead of going out and having a beer with all my colleagues, I'm sat here talking to you about myBTEC, so I hope you appreciate the sacrifice that's been made on your behalf. And I'm sure you'll be all released very shortly. Now, there are a few bits and bobs to show you today. The assumption is that you will have some sort of initial understanding of how myBTEC works, having gone to one of the previous events, the beginners events. If that's not the case, don't worry too much, still stick on there, but we won't be going through the very basic terminology, methodology of how to get on the system and how to claim a role and things like that. That is relatively straightforward. It is covered in the other webinar, so you will be able to backfill if you don't, if you haven't. We will be looking at some of the advanced features, and the majority of this stuff will be involved in having a look at the system, so you're not going to have to watch these slides for very long. There is a couple of polls that Ben, who's not Mark, despite what it says on the presenters list, runs in the background for me. If you could bring those up, Mark, if we're going to do them, if they're available, that'd be great, just to get to know you, just to establish that knowledge level and where you're from. There's one on screen as we speak. Choose an option, press submit, and then there'll be a short delay and we'll have a look at the results. And as soon as you're ready, Ben, you can cycle through those at your leisure. Perhaps that one is the least relevant, really, from my point of view. It's important to Ben and the colleagues at Pearson, but where you work is not that interesting to me. Well, you know, but you're all schools and FE colleges, usual vocational qualification providers. Really interested in how experienced you are, I suppose, and your role. If you have been on myBTEC before, you'll understand the nomenclature that's used, the quality nominee, the course leader, the internal verifier, the assessor. If you haven't, just put what you think and then we'll explain what each of those are in reality. If you have a role already in myBTEC, then that's what we'd like to select from that drop down. So we've got a fair few bits. The assessor, who is self-identified as assessor, is usually not just an assessor. Well, actually, that's not true. They often are, but usually you'd be asked to internally verify things as well. And even if you only internally verify one thing for one colleague, as far as myBTEC is concerned, you need the access privileges for internal verifier. That's all good, thank you. So we've got a fair smattering, including the big cheeses, the QNs, the quality nominees. And they're the senior people who tend to drive myBTEC through centres. And this is the key one for me today, really. Have you used it? Tried it a while ago, used it occasionally, use it often, or no, never. Hopefully, the no-nevers will have done the precursor to this course, the beginner's course, but don't worry if you haven't. Give you a second. Just controls a little bit where I pitch things. So we've got a few no-nevers. Well, the no-nevers might struggle a little bit because we're going to dive in, but I will try and backfill as and when I can. But you won't get the full in-depth conversation about it that you would do in the precursor event. Okay, thanks, Ben. I assume that's it, actually, as far as polls are concerned. You should be able to now see my presentation again. Now, the advanced features of myBTEC, as I say, the beginners webinar covers things like roles and creating assignments and the basics of creating a course and assigning people to a course. Lots more complex things can be done within myBTEC, and lots of functionality has been added relatively recently, within the last year or 18 months, including on-screen marking now. by on-screen marking, we're still not linking to portfolios through OneNote or Google Classroom or any of that stuff yet. This is still the admin side of things. It's a replacement for your paper systems in effect. Just because it says on-screen marking, it doesn't mean that you'll be able to all of a sudden see your learners' work within myBTEC. That's not the case yet. But you will be able to have an electronic mark book open whilst you're working and mark directly into the system. So it's a lot more convenient to do these things. And when you've done it, if you want to, if you're a big fan of hard copy, you can then export all those feedback sheets and have them in a folder if you want them. So the paper copies that you currently use along the lines of the standard pro formas that Pearson provides from their website, you can print out populated versions of those directly from myBTEC containing the information you've added into myBTEC. That makes sense. We can also control IV sampling within myBTEC now, so that's not just talking about the internal verification of assignment briefs, although that is in there as well. That's covered in the previous event, but we'll be looking at a little bit of that in a minute or two. But you can also now record your internal verification assessment decisions. So again, it's replacing the paper system that you may or may not already have using the forms that are provided by Pearson. Instead of the form itself, you will enter the information in a nice user-friendly way into the user interface on myBTEC. And again, if you want to, you can export those records and they will be transposed, if you like, into that standard form, and so you'll have a printed document where before you maybe had those documents held on Word or even done by hand with the dreaded pen. Progress tracking as well, it's a really good thing if you're just coming into this and you're not using much of the functionality, then progress tracking is a really useful feature of this, and there's quite complex features in progress tracking and we're going to go through those today. You can use it for predicted grades and target grades and calculating how many points they need to get in order to raise a grade, so you can help manage interventions and that kind of thing. You can also use a bit of complex functionality if you need to replace a unit in your qualification, or you need to add a unit into your qualification for whatever reason, and we'll just have a look at that as well. And we can drill down as well into that and look at not only the high level result from a unit, but also the results by learning outcome or assessment criteria. Have a look at that in detail, but before that, some top tips. Okay, so every time you log into this, you might find slight changes. You might find slight improvements, should I say, not changes. And those things are designed to be intuitive, so you don't necessarily need an update or a retraining to be able to use them, but there's one or two things that you might have to press on the explanation buttons or something, because that's one of the things that's in myBTEC a lot now, is if you hover over the little roundels with the question marks in them, it'll tell you what's going on, which is really useful. Now, these ones here is an indication that now Pearson systems have integrated with myBTEC so that you no longer have to type in the results of externally assessed units. So if you have an external examination as part of your BTEC, then previously what you had to do is download those results when you got them from wherever, from Edexcel Online, Results Plus or whatever, and then you had to type them into myBTEC manually. That has been removed now. Now those results are automatically ported across into your myBTEC course. And you know that because if it's got a little trophy symbol next to it, it means that that's an imported one. So that learner, in this instance, whoever he is, will have actually sat that exam, and that will be the examination result they have. And if they do it twice, sometimes they need to do a reset, then it's the highest grade that's ported across into myBTEC, as you would all be relieved to know. It does that to allow you to do the overall grade calculations a bit more accurately, to make sure that when there are live results that you could have in there, then those live results are actually in there and doesn't rely on you having to update them manually. The assessment pop-up now, if you want to, you get a choice automatically. If you're inserting an assignment brief into one of your qualifications, into one of your courses, then you can choose from a centre assignment brief. They're maybe the ones you used last year or the year before that you developed and you might want to reuse. Or you can go straight for the Pearson authorised assignment brief by clicking on that little button, and that will allow you to filter out all the other ones and just look at the authorised assignment briefs for that particular unit that you're looking at that are available from Pearson. So they're the same assignment briefs that are downloadable from the website, but they've been, again, transposed into myBTEC format. And you use all the same editing privileges or editing processes that you would if you'd have written one from scratch, but they're pre-populated. So those workflows, if you like, those wizards that you would generally use for creating an assignment, and we covered that in the first of these of the courses on myBTEC, the beginner's course, they're all pre-populated with the authorized assignment information. So it's the same system, but it's really useful to be able to pull those forward. Generally speaking, you always need to have a look at them. You always usually need to change scenarios and alter little bits, and certainly that the system's really good for doing that. And we'll show you a little bit about that later on, because I think we're going to send something away for internal verification. What else have we got talking of internal verification? A lot of this stuff now is designed around taking pain out of the process. So if you have got, for instance, a assignment brief that is based almost exactly on a authorized assignment brief as published by Pearson that you can access from within myBTEC, which I've just explained, then when you come to do the internal verification of that, you don't have to answer all the different questions. You can click on the options, is this assignment brief there? There are 4 options, and it sort of, the scope goes from, I've completely made this up myself, right the way down to this is exactly the same as a Pearson authorized assignment brief. Obviously, you need to do more extensive checks on something that you've completely made up rather than something that's already been pre-verified. So all that you would probably check on an authorized assignment brief is the dates have been populated on the assignment. That's about it. And once you do that and click yes in that one box, then the system automatically recognizes that as being fine, and it says this is fit for purpose at the bottom. You press a button and that's your IV done. So these things introduced to help save a bit of time. What else we got? If you still don't want to go the whole hog and start to assess online, as in you sit there with your myBTEC open and you write grades directly into that, you can download all the paperwork to be able to either the pre-populated forms with learning outcomes and assessment criteria and learner names and all that kind of stuff, things that maybe in the past you had to do via a mail merge from a spreadsheet into Word or something. You can now download that complete set of empty forms for you to use and handwrite them if that's what you want to do, if you don't want to go the whole hog initially and start entering things directly into myBTEC because you like paper. And you know, some people above a certain age, including myself, I like a bit of paper now and then. It's reassuring. Doesn't take long before you realise, though, that if you want that bit of paper, it's easier to generate it out of myBTEC from stuff that you've entered into there directly, rather than taking everything out, writing it by hand, or having 1,000,001 Word documents. Lots and lots of little examples around the place as well of where tweaks have been made to make things more user-friendly. You get to appreciate these if you were a long-time user of this and you've had a little annoyance for a while, or you thought, oh, that makes it better. 2 of these examples here. If an assignment brief's been IV'd recently, if it's used in 3 or 4 different courses in your centre, if you're a big centre and half a dozen different courses are running that use there's a crossover of units, perhaps you've got a first award and a certificate running or whatever, then obviously a recently internally verified assignment brief is going to be really useful to you. In fact, all you would need to check really, again, are the dates if it's been internally verified a few moments ago. And that element of that screen there will take you straight through to that previously internally verified assignment. Another one that if you've been using the marking you'll appreciate, if you've not you won't, but it's still really good, is that when you're using the automatic marking screens, you type in your results in, and we'll show you all these things in a second, and as soon as you've done one and it's complete and it's entered, then the grade that's been granted to that particular learner is displayed in brackets, bold, next to the learner's name. So test user 2 there is actually the learner, and the brackets L2M, that's a level 2 merit. These 2 at the bottom here, the markings in progress, we've not quite finished doing with what we're doing with those. And we'll have a look at that in a second. Those of you who have a meeting local needs element to your courses, that's now integrated within myBTEC. A very specific thing, you either know about that or you don't, you need it or you don't, but if you do need it, it is in there. So time for a little look-see. So if I just change over my screen seamlessly, this is me, this is a test system. It is the live system, but it is a test centre, a Pearson centre. Don't forget to press your I accept the terms and condition button. Log in. By the sound of it, my children have just got home from school downstairs, so if you do hear a lot of banging and shouting and screaming, I do apologise. I might have to stop and shout at them. So we're now into myBTEC, and this is what it looks like. Now we have got a course that I've pre-built. Here's one I made earlier in true Blue Peter style. And I have been having a few issues with my internet service provider today, so do bear with us if this is a little bit clunky. It's not myBTEC, it's my ISP. So we're going to have a look in this particular course here, and again you should be familiar, well hopefully you would be familiar if you'd gone to the previous training course, how to create a course itself. Well, we'll go through it. The course itself is controlled almost entirely in one place, using a series of tabbed menus. So we've got the course management structure here. This is what you would have established when we did the previous event. Your college and nominee is fixed in your centre. There is only one. Your lead internal verifiers are effectively fixed in every course. So that's your senior team. Usually you only have one QN. You usually have one LIV, lead internal verifier. But in this case, the test system, so it's a little bit all over the place sometimes. The course leader, that's me, because I created this course, and that's automatically populated as well. The person who creates the course is automatically nominated the course leader. Assessors and internal verifiers, I've had to add those in as the people who are working in my course, either doing the assessing and or internal verifying of work. And I've just got an assessor who's not doing any internal verifying, who's added in there as well. And other colleagues involved might be behaviour managers or heads of year. There's no one who's actually accepted or entered a role claim for that role in this particular centre. But you can allow anyone who needs access in your team, you can allow them access to whatever level of authority they need. It's important to get these allocated correctly because it allows the people involved access to the menus that they need in order to do their jobs. We've got an example of about 9 million exams officers down there for some reason, not sure. If you've not seen this before, the one or two of you haven't, the learners here, these are their names, test user 1, 2 and 3. These, I don't type these in, I don't have to do anything. Again, there is integration between Edexcel Online and myBTEC, and as long as there are learners registered to the course that ties in with the course code that we've just created around this particular course, then those learners are automatically available to populate your course in myBTEC. So if you've got lots and lots of learners registered on this particular course, you can pull in the ones that are in this class, if you like, and leave some to be pulled into another course that's using the rest of the cohort. So you'd have the entire cohort in here, and you can separate it by class by creating a new course for each class. Not as much work as it sounds, because once you've established a single course, one course, you can copy the whole thing very straightforwardly. Call it something else, and that can be class A, and then you've got class B. So you're running two classes doing the same qualification, if you like, but they're two different courses because they're managed by two different people, perhaps. So it fits in to how people actually work in schools, which is kind of important. Now, what have we got in terms to look at in here? Well, we've got some course assignments. And we'll have a little look at resubmission and things like that, I think, at the moment. All of your course assignments, this is not fully populated, but you will find nice little infographics like this starting to make appearances throughout myBTEC. I'm just going to turn my comments on, just in case I can pick a few up. But that's what Ben generally does in the background. I just want to make sure I don't miss out on anything. Yes. Infographics. So this is a little summary, if you like, of the course assignments that are currently in play. We've got 6 in play. 3 of them are finished, issued, assessed, done with. 1's active, which means that something's happening with it somewhere. Either it's not been marked or something. And 2 are in the process of being created. So they may have been internally verified, they may not. They may just be draft assignments that have been added into this course. And of all the assignments in my course so far, there are 14 learning outcomes or learning aims, and I've actually addressed 6 of those so far. So that gives me, once my entire structure is done, as you would run this in reality, that gives me a good idea of how much of my course is run and how much of my course is left to run. And at this time of year, it should be up here somewhere, really. This is the little screen where we spoke earlier about adding assignments. If you want to add an assignment into this, you can do, and it gives you the choice of your centre assignments, which are things that have already been generated by your centre, or the Pearson authorised assignment briefs, and you can choose to add one, then add one in. I did this earlier on, so I'll show you how that worked. That's exactly what I did when I put this assignment in place here. So this is a brand new assignment that I've just dropped in here. It's still a draft assignment. Let's go and have a look at it. Now I have been in here and I've edited this assignment previously, so I've taken out any and ors or delete as applicables, or altered the scenario slightly to match my center by editing the assignment, and we covered the assignment editor in a previous event. And the next stage is to internally verify it or to add it to my plan. Now, I can't really internally verify it until I've added it to my plan, because part of the internal verification procedure is to check the dates are appropriate. So let's see what happens if I try and send it to the internal verifier before it's ready. So there you go. What happens? Well, the system is clever enough to know that I can't do that. I need to add it to my assessment plan first. So it's inviting me to do so. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to backdate it slightly with some random dates, which of course you wouldn't do. You would have all these well thought out and established on your assessment plan. Now these dates will now backfill into my assessment plan when I add this particular assignment in. I'm going to assess it, and it's going to be internally verified by internal verify demo, Mr. or Mrs. IV demo. And I'm going to send that now. And you will notice that in my course assignments tab down here, I've got an IV in progress update on that particular assignment, which means that the IV process has been started. Now I can also go and check in my assessment plan, because that will now have been back populated into my assessment plan, which is, it was one of these ones, wasn't it? It was one of these, it was that one, I think. Unit 5, Learning Outcome B, or Learning Aim B. And they're the dates that I've just typed in, and the me and IV demo and IV demo. So you can either put things in your assessment plan first and then add an assignment brief to it, or as you're creating assignment briefs, add them into your assessment plan. So it's quite flexible in that regard. Like most of these systems, there is more than one way to skin a cat. So I didn't want to go to that. I wanted to go to course assignments again. So let's have a little look what's going off. So now I've got an IV in progress. Well, that means now that through the ether, an email has been pinged into the inbox of my internal verifier, and also my internal verifier will have a little my task that's popped into their workflow within myBTEC. So let's log in as if we are internal verifier and see what that looks like from their point of view. So I'm not me anymore. I'm now IV demo, and I'm not very good IV demo by the looks of it, because I've got 25 outstanding tasks in my workflow, which is never a good thing really. But let's just have a look. This is the one that I've just sent through. An assignment 5, identifying engineering materials, is awaiting review, and I don't have to mess around going and looking for these things. Just press the view button and the system navigates me directly where I need to be as internal verifier. And here I am. A moment or two for it to catch up with itself. Now here is the screen that we mentioned earlier in the slides. I get the usual number of questions, but I also now get this, is this assignment brief? Well, it is actually an authorized assignment brief exactly as published by Pearson. I haven't done anything to it, so I'm going to press that button. And you'll notice that all of these options pre-populate, so I'd no need to write any comments in any of those or to populate them, because they're all pre-verified. All I need to do is check that the dates were correct, and I've just entered those dates, so they should be. They're in my assessment plan now. And then I put a comment in there, a constructive comment. If you want to please your standards verifier, that's a very appropriate time frame, etc. And that's all I need to do. Even the overall is this assessment fit for purpose button has automatically populated, because they're all yeses. And then I can send it. If by any chance it's not right, then I can also send it, but this will be no. So I would fill in no. It automatically populates a no. I have to tell the IV to the assessor what's wrong with it, and agree a date with that's actioned, and then it pings back into their workflow, and then they do something with it, and they resubmit it, and it pings back into my work. You get the message. It's real time, so it pings backwards and forwards in real time. There's no waiting for brown envelopes to go through the vagaries of internal postage systems, but we're not going to do that because it's brilliant, because I wrote it, and so it's fine. So I'm just going to send that as IV, and that will save it, and then I'm happy. Now I will now have received an email to tell me that that has now been approved, in case I wasn't in myBTEC at the time, which will give me the prompt then to go and have a look in myBTEC and carry on my work. So I'm going to log out, and I'm going to go back in here as, get the right one, me. You following it so far? This fast and furious, this. So I'm back in as me. Now if I go and have a look at my course now, manage courses, that's the one we're looking at. And if we now look at the list of assignments, oh no, wrong button. I should have been down there. I went back to the whole center assignment list then. I've done this before, honest. So I want to be in there. And inside this course, I'm looking for the course assignments. Pressed that one up there, went to the wrong place. Need to press this one down here to get to the right place. So I'm interested in the assignments within this course. So here I am again. So now I've got two assignments down here that are ready for learners, because they've now been, the one that was ready for IV is now ready for learners. Now, let's have a look. In this instance, now I can go in to have a look at this one, and I can show you how the internal marking works. So again, assignment brief, that's what the brief looks like. It's now been internally verified. Did I actually assign some learners to this? No, I didn't. No learners have been added to this assignment, so I've done this a little bit wrong, but the system knows, because the status is ready for learners. I can't do any marking yet because I've not told you the system who I'm going to mark, and so cleverly Ben and his team have written this in here, so I'm not sat scratching my head thinking what's going on. I can hit that button and I can add learners into my course. Forgotten how to do it? The system will help you whenever it can. Once you've got learners into your course, then the system will allow you to start to assess things. It's assuming now that things have been issued, work has been completed and handed back in. Obviously the system doesn't know that. That's down to you to tell the system. Now, one thing I'm going to make sure here, this is the online marking form again. Now I've got some learners, it's populated the mark sheets for me. So I've got the Unit 5, I've got the criterion from those particular, for this particular assignment that I'm looking at, which is a lot of them by the looks of it. So let's have a look what's going on. There were 3 years that started this on the 9th of June. The hand-in deadline was the 16th of June. So I'm going to say that these guys handed this in on time, or this particular learner handed it on time. For a particular reason, because if I don't and it's late, then I won't be able down here potentially to authorize a resubmission, because one of the criteria of authorizing resubmission, and if I hover over that question mark, it tells me, is that they have met the initial deadline set. So if you find they're in a situation where you can't authorize a resubmission, go back up and check that the deadline has been met at the top. And if they didn't, then strictly speaking, they shouldn't be allowed a resubmission unless, of course, it was an agreed extension, at which time you can change the dates and the system will open up and allow you to do things. So let's just mark it then. Okay, so we have got the level 1 pass criteria. Yep, got that, no problem. Oh, I've got some populating text now that's going to help I can alter that and change that if I want to put something specific in there, but it just populates that box for me with a little bit of relevant text. He also got P2. He didn't get P3 though, oddly. Shame about that. And now the system wants some very definite feedback, but he did get the rest. So that's a bit of a problem. Didn't quite reach, didn't quite do what was necessary to get there. So this learner didn't get there, unfortunately. Okay, so I agree with this declaration, blah, 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 blah. Now, in this situation, we would undoubtedly authorize a resubmission. I don't have to do this now. I could go back in later and put this flag in to allow me to resubmit, but I'm having a word with my lead internal verifier as I speak, and I'm saying, yeah, this guy needs to have a look at that because he's got a distinction overall. Otherwise, he's just made a mess of that one pass criteria somehow. So we're going to flag this one so it can be authorized for a resubmission. Something missing by the looks of things again. What haven't I done? If I've done something, there's usually a little round, I think it's probably this general comments box, because, let's have a look up here, there is no result in brackets against test user 3 yet. And that tells me when that appears that the system's happy. So I need to put some comments in here. I think that's what it is. Maybe. Oh. Let's fill that one out. That actually technically I think should be a grayed out one, but it isn't. But now that's worked. So I've got L1P. So I've filled out all the grades that aren't grayed out. We'll get Ben to look at that one. And the system's now happy. And I know it's happy because it says L1P up here. So I'm not looking around and thinking, scratching my head of why is this system not working. Okay, so test user 1, done 3. Number 1, when did they hand it in? Well, that was the same date as well. They handed it in on time on the 16th. They did really well. They just got everything. It's fine. Oh, that's why, because they didn't get, that's not a problem actually. That's not a mistake. That's because they didn't get the level 2 pass criteria, so it automatically opened up the level 1 criteria for me. So that's, again, the system being cleverer than I am, which is annoying when it's cleverer than yourself, isn't it? We're going to be all replaced by machines eventually. So I put some comments in there. I agree this decision. That's all good. There's no need to fill in the flag for a lead IV authorization because they've got everything. They've already got a distinction, so there's nothing to do with it. Let's have a look. Populated there, L2D, everyone's good. Let's do the last learner in here. And again, they did it on the 16th too. And yep. But they didn't get a merit and they didn't get a distinction. But they were miles off, to be honest. And I don't know whether it's worth giving a resubmission, so I don't think I'm going to. I don't have to if I'm not convinced the learner will be able to change the work and do something better without any intervention from myself. I don't have to click that flag. So I'm going to say no, I don't think he's capable of getting that without significant input from me, which is not allowed under the assessment rules. So agreed, everything's happy, all those bracketed things are populated, and now I can, this finish all button lights up, and when I'm done, finish all. Now, at this stage, what I can do, and it's prompting me to do, is do I need to send some of this to an internal verifier for sampling, or don't I? Now, to go through that system, it's a similar one to the one we looked at previously with the assignment brief. Same system really, sends out forms to fill in. Shall we do that? We've got time to do that? Maybe not. I want to show you some interesting other stuff. So I'm not going to send any forms for IV sampling this time. I'm just going to finish it. But it's fairly self-explanatory that if you want to do this yourself, you certainly can, and maybe we can do some later on if we have time. So those results now are being saved. And we can go and have a look at those, which is where I'm going next, in the mark screen. And again, the IV sampling, like I said, it's all controlled in the same area, just by different drop-downs. So in this case, that will not be populated because I've not requested any. But I really want to show you the resubmission system and other bits too. Right, so there's nothing to see in the IV sampling. So that's all done. I can go back into the online marking if I want to, and I can change things. I could add resubmission flags if I wanted to, so I could change that to a no if I wanted to, or I could go back into this one and say, oh, go on then, I think you might be able to. That's already is yes. But that stuff now will have moved into the Learner Progress Tracker, which is an interesting place to be. Now we have got Learner Progress Tracker, and I don't think we covered this in any detail before, so I'm going to spend a few minutes on this, and then we're going to go back and see what we can do with a resubmission. So let me just make a note of what I'm going to do. We're going to go to Tracker, and then we're going to do a resub, because resubs are relatively common. Retakes less so. If you want to retake, I think that means effectively writing an entirely new, well, it does mean writing an entirely new assignment brief that just targets those assessment criteria that haven't been reached. So you would do that manually, I believe, at the moment. But let's have a look what's going on in here. I've got my users that are in my course here. We've got some empty fields, which is not great usually, and we've got empty fields because I haven't got any predicted grades for Unit 5. So let's just translate what's going off in here. This grade is manually set, so let me have a look. Set targets and predictions. If this is all empty, this is where you would come in. And this is the target grade for a particular user, and I can change that to whatever I want to. It's not actually a result, it's just what I expect or require Fisher Family Trust-wise for these guys to get, or ASPs or whatever you're driven by. And these are the individual unit predicted grades. I know they're only predicted grades because they're not bold. Now Unit 2 is not allowing me to do anything with, and it's in bold, because Unit 2, if you recall back there in the course structure, has already been done and marked and finished. So that is now in bold, and these grades are real ones that have been backfilled from the assessment information that I've entered. Now these ones haven't, so these ones are all still editable because they're all still predictions. Now you'll notice this grayed out one, I'll talk about that in a second. We haven't got any predictions in currently for Unit 5, so let's stick some predictions in for Unit 5, and then I'm going to save those predictions. Now what that's going to do, it's going to take all those predicted grades that I've entered into the system, and it's going to run them through the algorithms, the same algorithms that Pearson used for certification, and it will pop up with some predicted grades for me. So if my learners actually achieve what I have just entered into this, then this is the their outcome will look like. And again, we've got infographics populating as well. How many learners I've got are actually on target, how many units that are actually in the system currently have being assessed or are being assessed. There are 4 units here, and Unit 2 is complete, therefore, bit of maths, 25% of the units are done. Now you'll see that 2 out of my 3 learners are on target, it's warning me up there. Now my target grades, I've just gone a bit too far. I'll pass, and merit, and my overall grades, and these ones are the ones that are calculated, just hover over that one. That is a predicted outcome calculated today by Pearson certification system. So that another example of what these little question marks are for. You hover over it, tells you some information. So these are the overall grades that are based on the predictions and the real ones, actually a combination of the two that we've entered into this system. This target grade is the one that I manually entered earlier on, and that's where I need my learners to be if I'm not going to get in trouble with my senior management. This is the points that a learner will need. That's the difference in points between the overall grade as it's being calculated from their predictions that I've entered and where I need them to be in terms of the target grade that I'm expecting them to achieve. So that gives me an idea of where or how I need to make changes or give support or do something in order to get this guy another 12 points from somewhere. Another interesting one, if you had a situation where one of these units was externally assessed, this is an old school QCF or NQF, but it's not an RQF, whatever. This one hasn't got any externally assessed element to it, and if it did, oh, actually, Unit 1's externally assessed. I'm talking rubbish. It does have an externally assessed unit, and that's Unit 1. Now, this stuff here is not a these are predictions that we entered in, and if these had a little trophy next to them, then they would be actual exam results that had been pulled in from Edexcel Online. So we saw that in the slides earlier on. Obviously, these made-up users haven't got exams results, so these aren't populated. So these are still predictions. But as and when these did sit their papers, those would be populated into here. I can add final grades if I want to. So if I was just using this as a mark sheet without any of this backfilling from actual assessment, so I wasn't doing the assessment in myBTEC, but I wanted to set a final grade, then I can do that using this button. And that's why it's warning me that these are grades that will, I'm saying, have been achieved by learners. They're not backed up by the assessment evidence in myBTEC, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not fair and valid. Just warning you. Agreed. And then you can set these to be bold. And that's quite important because Ben and his team are working on a system, I'm just going to cancel that, on a system where you can export results directly from this tracker into the results claiming system. So this will feed directly into what used to be a spreadsheet or whatever else you used to tell your exams officer the results on a spreadsheet or a big form or something, and they'd enter them into the system. Ben and his team are working so that these results will automatically upload, so they need to be correct. If you want to do that, obviously it's not going to do that without your consent or knowledge. You have to physically go in and allow that. So that's what that one's for. Bit more of a complicated scenario in this one. This unit only requires this qualification only requires 4 units, but there are actually 5 in here. And that's because halfway through my course, I'm imagining Unit 4, the tutor for that, or the workshop that's required for that, or something terrible happened and we couldn't continue with Unit 4, and for whatever reason we had to change a unit halfway through a course. So I was able to kill Unit 4 and add Unit 5. And then you can control which ones of these you actually want. You can move learners between different units. How did I do that? Well, let's go back and we'll add another unit into this. So go back to course management. Are you thoroughly confused yet? You will be. And here in my course management are where all of my course units are. Now, if I want to add another one, I did this previously with engineering materials. If I want to add yet another one, I can. Let's add CAD. And I'm going to add that unit in, and it will appear in my units list down here. There you go, it's in there. Now, if it's in there, then it will also appear in here, in the Learner Progress Tracker. Where is it, I hear you ask? Well, scroll across. Whew, that was close, and it is there. But it's still grayed out because there are no learners assigned to it. And you'll notice that when these calculations are done, these calculations are all still happy because these calculations ignore the units that are grayed out. Now, if I want to assign test user 1, instead of doing unit 5, test user 1 is going to do unit 6 instead, I can add or edit unit exclusions. So let's press that button. Now, these are the ones that can move, because the system knows that Unit 1 and Unit 2 are mandatory, nothing you can do about that, but these are a group of 4 optional units. The grayed out ones currently aren't used in calculations or anything else, but I can change that. I can go into that one and I can turn that to green and I can lose that one. I can go into, let's change all of Unit 5, we're not doing Unit 5 anymore, we're going to do Unit 6 throughout. And I'll save that, and that should make a mess of all the calculations because there aren't any predictions in there for Unit 6. And it should then grey out Unit 5 as not being used. So the system's got a lot of flexibility built into it, and again, the fact that it stops you moving mandatory units, make sure you do things correctly. Oh dear, got no learners on target anymore because I've got no predicted grades in. So let's just set those predicted grades. They're all going to do brilliantly in Unit 6, whatever that is. I'll save that, and then we should go back and it'll recalculate the grades further on. So you can see there that 4 and 5 are now grayed out. They've been ignored by the system as if they never existed, and my learners now are all taking Unit 6. Could be in a situation, potentially, where one learner is doing 6, one's doing 5. There are a myriad options that you can configure. in an attempt to allow you to reach all of your requirements. Now let's have a little look, see what's happened. There's no points needed anywhere anymore, which is good, because according to my figures now, taking into account my predicted grades for Unit 6, then the overall grades are going to be pass, merit, which means that everyone's on target. In fact, test user 3 is above target, which is music to my ears. So lots and lots of things you can do in there, lots of intelligence in there if you want to use it, and you don't have to use the intelligence if you don't want to. It is a really good way. I remember in the past designing macros or formula in an Excel spreadsheet that sort of tried to interpret the combinations and the points and add them all up and decide what grade. There's no need to do that anymore. This system, if you type in a set of grades in a set of units, it will use the algorithms in Pearson's system to tell you what the overall grade is, which is another a nice reassurance that you're getting those calculations right when you come in to do your resulting at the end of the year. Now let's go and have a little look-see elsewhere. If we go back to course management again, I didn't want to go to course management, I want to go to course assignments actually. So let's have a look what's going off in here. So we've got that one's ready for learners, that's fine. That's assessment started. That one is an interesting one, because if I look here, and we've only got 5 or 10 minutes left. This is one that I resubmitted. Now you'll notice that on my online marking here, I've done this marking once. Look, there's a set of marking there that all 3 users have been marked. Now, unfortunately, 2 of them underachieved, and so we flagged them as lead IV resubmission authorization. Right? We did that. It's all good. And then what I did was hit the add resubmission button. Now, just because you flagged them down here as being allowed or authorized for a resubmission, it doesn't automatically generate a resubmission. So what you have to do when you've got that flag in there is click the add resubmission button, and it allows you to create a resubmission for learners where that has been authorized. When that happens, then you get 2 new tabs. You get a resub marking and a resub sampling that are the same, or copies of, the online marking and the IV sampling. So it's the same process in effect. So this is the same, the 2 learners, we had 3 originally, 1 was fine, who have been authorized resubmissions in this case. And what I have got here is a marking screen just for the criteria that they didn't achieve. So I can go back and have a look at their reassessed or their resubmitted piece of work. They've been away, made changes, and now I am happy with that piece of work. So the hand-in deadline was actually the 28th, which is handy because that's today. And this time they did actually achieve that. Well done. And I'll get some comments here. So remember, this is the resubmission. Yep, I'm happy that they did it themselves and all that. What else have I lost? There you go, it's populated. So now the system's happy that because I have now awarded this merit criterion, that was the only thing that was missing previously, which has allowed them to actually achieve a distinction now in this assignment. So let's have a look at the other guy who was resubmitted as well. And again, they were done at the same time, and marking in progress. And this time, yep, they also did that too. And I'm going to put some comments to explain how brilliantly they've done, and to agree with that. So thinks about it for a second and then confirms that's all hunky-dory up there. Then I can finish all again. Again, I'm asked whether I want to send my resubmissions for IV sampling. I don't really at this point, because we haven't got time to show you. So do not send for IV sampling, and then finish. Thinking about it. Now it's going away and it's going to update all the mark sheets for this. So this is actually one of the Unit 2s. That information now will have been saved across to the mark sheet. So let's go and have a look at the learner progress mark sheet. See if anything's altered in Unit 2, which it will have done. I'll also show you how to drill down in a mark sheet as well. So Unit 2s now, they have all been, I can't remember which two it was actually, it'd be one of the two, won't it? So we can actually look, we can drill down. If you press on the unit number itself, you can see which ones of these have actually been met. Now they've all now met these criteria, which are the ones that we have just resubmitted or marked the resubmissions for. And that's how you dig down, that's how you drill down, by the way. That's the overall unit grade or predicted unit grade. What's actually happened is visible if you press the top one. So if I go into Unit 5 here, that we marked some bits earlier on, then there's lots of it that's empty because we haven't done the second assignment, but because we marked some stuff earlier on, all that stuff is now populated. And if and when I issue the resubmissions for these, because there are a couple of potential resubmissions here, weren't there? There was that one especially, which is test user 3. It will go, well, and we did that, it'll go back and update it. So let's go and have a look at that assignment that's been marked then in Unit 5. And I really must stop. So what I'm looking for, I'm looking for the assignment that's been marked in Unit 5. So Unit 5, that one's ready for learners, so it can't be that one, it must be this one. This is the one we've just been looking at in the learner progress sheet. Okay, so now if you recall, and I'll go to the online marking in this particular one, this is the one that we marked live. And I've got a guy here who's only got a level 1 pass, which is really going to mess things up because they've got some missing stuff. And down here we had some resubmission authorizations. But if you notice, there is no resubmission opportunity as yet because I need to add some. So if I had a couple of resubmissions, all of the learners where there is the flag, and there's only one of them if you recall, and where the flag to authorize a resubmission now appear here, and I can add that. And lo and behold, in a minute, there's the resub marking and the resub sampling of this particular assignment. So I can go back into resub marking here, and they've been away and they've taken that and they've made it better and they've come back. And now it's just a repeat really of how you mark it normally. The only thing they had missing was that particular one, and they've done really well and they've managed to do it, thank goodness. And then I put some comments in here to explain what's going on. And I agree this declaration, and it should think about it and let me proceed. I haven't put a date submitted in, that's what it's waiting for. It's handy having that little bracketed thing to tell you when it's happy. Because otherwise you can be looking for things when you don't really know why or when or who. So that's happy. The finish all flag has come up. So now, if you notice, despite the fact we've only just passed a pass criterion, that will filter through and allow this learner to actually achieve a distinction overall. So we can finish that. Do I want to send it for sampling? I don't this time, no, thank you. And again, that resubmission will have been processed and it should have had an impact on the learner progress in Unit 5. And this will be the last thing we look at before we return into the presentation. Come on, retrieve it quicker. Oh, we got so close to the end of the event without my ISP making a mess of things. Let's try again. And then try the learner progress screen again. That's better. Here we go. So now in Unit 5 over here, better things should have happened. So this learner now has met all of those and has a distinction overall. So that resubmission has been fed through into the mark screen, into the mark book. Splendid. Right, so there's lots of other things we could go in and show you. I tell you, I've assiduously avoided going and looking at the sampling of learner work, but it's a similar process. They're all based around similar workflows and messages that go to colleagues who are involved in the system. It's one of those things that once you get your eye in, you begin to appreciate the value of it. And I also appreciate that these events are very fast, very furious. That's why we have me spouting and Ben in the background answering the questions to keep things flowing and to also give you opportunity to dig a bit deeper into the detail where you need to. Now, I do believe, I'm not actually sure whether there is a recording. There used to be recordings available of these events for you to access post-event. Not sure whether that's true anymore. So if there are, you can go back and you can run through these a little more slowly and try and follow the system. So I do appreciate it's difficult. I think it's dead easy because I know how to do it. You know, people who don't obviously don't find it that straightforward. So let's go and have a little look now at the rest of the presentation. There's not a great deal to look at, but there are some important things I think that we need to just mention. So the things that we're in development right now as we speak, not quite made it into there. This is what I've mentioned during the time that we were in the system itself, adding the function to export that progress tracker directly into the certification system to save time with you and your exams officer. The course builder's been rejigged and rebuilt to be more user-friendly. Loading times are getting better. Charts and dashboards and those infographics that we were talking about to give you a quick overview of what's going on in your course. And it's important to realize that myBTEC is something that was conceived and designed and built for BTEC qualifications for Pearson, and so Pearson have that flexibility in the team in place to continue to make it better and continue to make it to give it more functionality. Quick summary. This is an important slide that I know Ben agrees is important. There's no need really to dive into this all at once. Now, the depth of use is three stages of depth of use, if you like. There's the course builder, where you can actually use the parts of the functionality of the system to assign the staff and add the learners to your courses. That allows you to use all the trackers. Now, the trackers, I've explained the advantage of using the tracker. It's really good. You don't have to have any of the other stuff feeding into it. You can just use it as a manual calculator for grades, and it's really useful in that regard. If you want to go at the next stage in, start adding your assignments in there, and you can incorporate your internal verification system into myBTEC, which neatens everything up. Once you've got your head around that, you can start getting staff to mark actually directly into myBTEC, to add the grades and the comments and the feedback directly into myBTEC. And associated with that then is the paperwork involved in sampling their assessment decisions. So you don't have to dive in it all at once. You can pick and choose the little bits. As a minimum though, you need the course builder, you need to add your learners into your courses, because that activates your progress trackers, and the progress trackers are a really useful tool even if you don't use anything else. Right, there are, if you stick around, a couple of polls that Ben is especially interested in. So if you can stick those up at your leisure, Ben, because I don't want to keep these good people any more than absolutely necessary on this fine afternoon. The sun is shining here. It's actually warm in the south of Scotland today, and it's not raining. So just as a little bit of a roundup, if you could give us some feedback on what you've just seen and heard, that would be fabulous. How do you think you're going to choose to use it? Are you going to go the whole hog, or are you just going to start slowly and build up? Yes. Everyone's going to do everything, Ben. We like it, which is kind of, you know, that should be the level of ambition that we want to try and promote, because I think the system is really good and it will save you a load of time and grief and effort, and even in terms of people accessing the data and being able to see what they need to see from a management perspective and a standards verification perspective is really useful too. Is there something more in there, Ben? And these guys can't actually go anywhere, can they? They'll all be stuck in classrooms somewhere, still, with no learners, which is a favourite time of year, I'm sure. Oh, I'm glad I covered marking and IVing and tracking progress in myBTEC, given that question. Yay! Goodness. And that's something, because the system belongs to Pearson and has been managed by Ben and his team, we do need people to get in there and get involved in developing this and being external testers and prototypers. That's how the system gets better. That's how more functionality, the building of more functionality, is prioritized by the people who want it. So to get involved, splendid. Which I think just leaves it for me to say thank you very much for attending this afternoon. Again, apologies for it being fast and furious, but we do try and fit as much in as we possibly can in terms of the demonstration, and also giving you access to the subject matter expert on the system itself, Ben and his team. So I hope you found that really useful. If there is an opportunity to provide feedback on training, I believe, once the event has closed. So we'd appreciate if you did that as well. That'd be fab. But that's me signing off. I'm going to sunbathe in the back garden and get my dose of vitamin D for this year before it starts to rain again. So with that, thank you very much for coming, and I'll see you later.